thank you for being here. Yeah. I know you have probably other stuff you could be doing, but again. So, I did this presentation because even with some experienced real estate agents, there are some that are getting confused about what an inspection is and exactly what we should be doing. And I wanted to clear that up, and I know for newer agents, it would be difficult thinking about the whole process. I had an agent tell me recently, oh, I didn't know that was a different inspection. And so I think this would help clear it up. So this presentation is, as a real estate agent, what you should know about the home inspection process. So this is the overview. I would talk about the standard of practice. I would talk about what when inspection meeting, what are the different inspections, and when should you get them inspected, not exactly date and time.
Right.
But whether it's needed or not. So there's a different topic: home inspection, wind mitigation, mold, and then we'll talk about Inspectra and why they're different. So before I talk about the inspection process, this is a picture of my family, and and it kind of talks to our character. My daughter is she's a very hard worker, just like a horse. She is one of the happiest people, one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. My son is as stubborn as a goat, but he wants to do anything I'm doing, he wants to be a part of. Of course, I'm a cool cow. And my partner, Laura, is very, very smart. I think one of the smartest people I know. Laura actually owns her own consultant firm where they focus on certifying different professionals such as lawyers and doctors and in certain areas. Their main focus right now is trauma-informed care. How do you speak to somebody without re-traumatizing them? So in your own words, Jonathan, what would you say is a home inspection?
It's really inspecting the home.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's very important.
Interior and exterior.
Yeah.
Inspections interior and exterior.
And it is confusing because as a real estate agent, I don't think we're taught to really look into it. But this is one of the definitions I got: home inspection, where contracts go to die.
Oh my God.
And
That's true.
I think there's a miscommunication, and so we'll talk a little about that later on. Well, when we talk about home inspections, a home inspection is a snapshot. So in different environment or elements, you'll get a different inspection. If it hasn't rained for about 50 days, it's a little different from when it rained the day before. So this is actually a inspection that I did, and one day she had a little spot on her roof. I pointed it out. I said, I believe that's a leak. I used a moisture meter. It was a leak, and told her that they're gonna have to take care of this soon, or else it's gonna get worse. And the video is a week later. Sutton just forced open that crack, and it was spilling all over the floor, everywhere. So when we make these recommendations, we don't know exactly how long something will hold, but we know that it needs to be taken care of. Again, a home inspection is a snapshot of that moment in time. That's what it was. Again, a week later, what it became. A home inspection is bound by the standard of practice. And the standard of practice is actually just the bare minimum of what we do as a home inspector. But that's something that you also see as a realtor. If you're a transaction broker, you have your bare minimum, what you have to do if you're a no brokerage relationship. There's a bare minimum. Now, us as a home inspector, we can always exceed the standard of practice. Just like realtors, you can go above and beyond. The difference you'll see in a bigger home inspection company and a smaller company, where we're more flexible as a smaller company to change these things. And we'll talk about why that's important a little later. So if you go on my website, one of the things you will find on there is the standard of practice, and it goes through exactly what the scope of the inspection is. We'll talk about the roof, what we will expect, what we may not inspect. But that's something that you can always talk to the home inspector about. Say, hey, I know you guys don't normally check this. Can you do this? A home inspection is recommended. It's not required.
Okay.
And so that's important. So the home inspection is made for the buyer. Now you may have some companies like the lending or the insurance company that may require a home inspection, but typically you won't see that. It is typically for the buyer only. So this is the definition I have for a home inspection. It's a non-invasive visual examination of the accessible areas of a residential property, which is designed to identify defects that have been defined in the standard of practice, that are both observed and deemed material by the inspector within specific systems and components. So when you talk about a home inspection, there's a little more to it than just looking at the inside and the outside. Now, we have the right under it. So you have here the definition. One of the things I wanted to point out is, I believe it was 2. The home inspection will not reveal every issue that exists or ever could exist, but only these materials defined and observed on the date of the inspection. And so a home inspection will not find every defect. There's some defects we'll talk about later that are covered up and we can't see.
Okay.
And also on the top of 1.1, it talks about modifying the inspection before the inspection happened. So there should be a conversation about what would you like extra. And so a non-invasive, when you think of a home inspector, think of a family doctor. A family doctor is not the one who's going to do the surgery on your head, right? A family doctor is going to say, hey, there's something wrong with your toe. You probably need a brain surgery. So we're going to send you off to the brain surgeon, right? They're not doing the invasive work. They're not cracking open your head and checking everything out. They're just sending you off. And that's what a home inspector does. They say, hey, something is wrong with this system, this component. I'm recommending you to talk to someone who specializes in this component because they're able to tell you a little more about what's going on. So sometimes when we do inspections, this is what we see. Some of the areas we can't get to. And I caution any realtors that see this because there could be a problem later on. They could say, hey, you didn't tell me that this outlet wasn't working, or there is a hole in the wall. a home inspector is actually not required to move anything. It is an examination of what we can see, what we can get to. So now we have to see it, and then we have to deem that it is a material defect. And so I have the definition of a material defect on the screen, and to kind of simplify it is
Right.
it doesn't work. It's a safety hazard, or you're gonna have to put a lot of money into it to get it back to what it should be doing.
Now, you said inspectors can't remove or remove anything?
Well, they're not required to.
Oh, they're not required.
Yeah, so, I have it right up here, I believe it's A. Says, the inspector is not required to move any personal items or any obstacles such as but not limited to throw rugs, carpeting, wall covering. And so
Now, what if the sellers move it?
if the sellers move it, then that's fine.
Okay.
You know, we can see, if they're able to move things away from the walls. Now, with a bigger company that, their sole focus is to make more money, you're gonna have those inspectors who's just gonna say, okay, there was stuff in the way, I couldn't get to it. And that's how they're gonna write the report, basically. Smaller companies may want to prove themselves a little more, and so they will do some digging, move some more stuff, but that's not a guarantee. So for your best outcome is to make sure that there's nothing in the way, that's gonna get in the way of the inspector. And so there's a bunch of other stuff, and this is. I think this is just an overview of what they're not required to do. When you go on the roof, it does the same thing. Hey, this is what we're gonna do, this is what we're not required to do. And when you look at home inspections, there's two standards of practice really that's out there. One is going to be the state has their requirements, so every inspection has to abide at least by the state. And International is where I was certified through. Their standard of practice actually exceeds the state requirements. So again, an inspection is designed to identify certain defects, but not all defects. When we talked about material defect, the fact that a system or component is near or beyond the end of its normal useful life is not in itself a material defect. So if we examine a roof, and so, asphalt shingles typically last about 20 years. Let's say you have an asphalt shingle roof that's 30 years old, but it's not leaking, then that in and of itself is not a defect. So an inspector might say, hey, this is an old roof. But it won't be red. Some might not even put it in there, like a hot water heater. They may say, oh, this is 8 years old. But that in and of itself, now if there's something wrong, like there is a leak, then that's when an inspector will say, hey, there's a problem, you need to fix it. It's a defect. So this is some of the limitations, the exceptions, like we're supposed to check the outlet, but if there's something in the way, we're not supposed to. And you'll see that in the standard of practice. The standard of practice is really important to know. Because some programs like International, they have a buyback program. And if we miss something in the standard of practice that we're supposed to check, but we didn't, and that's causing the problem, the International will actually buy the house back. But again, you have to know the standard of practice. It's important for the client. And there's been times where people came to me and say, hey, wasn't an inspector supposed to check this? And I say, according to this, my standard of practice, I wouldn't have had to have checked it. Now, probably would
What's an
have.
example of something that like you don't check? That makes sense.
Okay, so the lawn irrigation system,
Okay.
we don't have
I
to
know
check that.
pools you guys don't do.
Pools, I can, I'm
Oh,
certified.
Oh, cool.
I don't have to according to the standard of practice. Now for insurance purposes, we will check it because they ask, because that's part of the 4-point inspection, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, 4-point inspection. Where is it? Yeah, it's a 4-point. Now something else, like a garage, if it's built in, attached garage, we'll check that, but if it's a detached garage, we don't have to check that.
Oh.
So, and that could be very important because maybe the roof is about to cave in. And so that's something you may want to look into. Small systems, we don't check, so like the doorbell, remote, antenna, stuff like that, we won't check.
Okay.
Now, again, it gives you a lot more information when you check the standard of practice. I'm trying to think if there's another big. For the most part, we're supposed to check the most important things. So this is a irrigation system that part of the inspection we're not supposed to check. I went in, I checked it anyway, or I couldn't check it because the power was off. That's what I had to, and that's where you get some of the problems, some of the things we can't access.
Is that for the pool?
No, it's for irrigation system. So they had a separate
Okay,
pump.
My bad. It looks like the thing in the pool.
Yeah, no, I see that. They're some of them are the same motors. And so you may see that. So when you look at this, you see this is line by line. It has information of what we'll see, what we're supposed to inspect, what we are not supposed to inspect. But when you get closer, it talks about some of the limits, some of the things we're not supposed to. So I highlighted you because some of the language in here you won't understand. But this is talking about certain pipes. There's certain pipes that we're not supposed to check. And this was one of the inspections we did. Now, because they also included the 4-point inspection, we went and we checked it anyways, but we wouldn't have had to check this because it was in its own closet with this little door that that shuts it off. This was actually a $2 million house.
Wow.
And we're like, this house should have 4 water heaters for the size of the house, and we kept looking, we couldn't find it. And then later on in the inspection, we seen it was behind a closet, and then we looked in and we saw, uh-oh. Now you're looking at it, you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But if we go back to you, it talks about certain piping, and that what we found.
Yeah, I was looking at those pipes too, the great pipes, like they don't look right.
Yeah, the gray pipes, now not all gray pipes are bad, but
Right.
This pipe is known to fail within the walls. So, when we do the 4-point inspection, the insurance company doesn't like to see these pipes. So they might have a higher premium because of it. But on a regular home inspection, we would not have. Some may have put in the reports, some may have just left and say, it's behind the wall, or may have never even checked inside the wall to see what that was. But it's like, hey, I'm not supposed to move anything. And then may not even put in a report because, again, I'm not supposed to talk about or check it. Now, they may mention it, but they may not. And again, because the pipe is in there, doesn't mean it's a defect. As long as it's not leaking at the moment, it's not considered a defect.
That makes sense.
So, so the first, inspection we talked about was the, general home inspection. Now I'll talk about wind mitigation inspection. Now, wind mitigation, is the implementation of certain building techniques in order to limit damage caused by intense wind. Certain, so in 1992, when the hurricane came through and it devastated the south region, the government stepped in and said, "Hey, we have to change something. This can't keep happening." So they said they looked at some of the houses and see what was why did some house withstand this and why did mostly all the other ones collapse. And then they found out that certain building techniques held up better, and some of the wind. And we'll talk about some of those things. But true or false, you have to have a wind mitigation inspection.
False.
Maybe. It is a trick question. It's maybe because some companies, you'll automatically get the wind mitigation discount depending on the year of the house. If it's a newly built construction, then they should have all these techniques depending on the area it was built. They should have all these the features, so they should get all of the discount. Wind mitigation inspection are good for 5 years. Now a company could say, "Hey, you just had a hurricane. We need you to get your house checked," and they may order you to get another wind mitigation inspection just to make sure everything is still good. So yeah, after the hurricane, what the government said is, how are we going to get these people to implement these techniques? And so what they told insurance companies is, if they have any of these techniques, then they should get a credit. And so you'll hear about different discounts and or credits. I believe there's about 7 credits. And there's 2 areas, 2 different zones. There's wind-borne debris regions, which is anything that's at least a mile, anything less than a mile off the coast is automatically. Now there's a map for it, and there's some that's further in, but at least if you're within a mile, then you have to have some of these. You have to have these techniques in place, or else your premium is going to be through the roof. And then there's a high velocity hurricane zone, and there's only one zone, and that's Dade County. In Dade County, they're actually a lot worse when it comes to the techniques you have to have. And again, if you're missing any of these inspections or these techniques, then it's going to be through the roof. So these are some of the things you will not see, but something that we check for is how much of these nails are holding your roof to the wall. We'll check the length of the attachment from the deck to the truss. We'll check some of the spacings, and here is again, you won't see it unless you're walking through the attic, and I don't know why you would be, but that is just an extra layer of protection. Now, some of the other things you will see.
Cool.
Okay, there you go. Some of the things you will see are some of the windows and doors. I was going to add pictures to let you know what you should be looking for, but I think the best thing for a realtor is to have the documentation. So if your client has documentation on having hurricane-proof windows, hurricane-proof doors, then that's gonna be the best, because sometimes they may think it's hurricane proof. And we as inspectors, we actually have a discussion board and we talk about, hey, is this right, is this wrong? And they show the sign and they're like, well, one thing says it is and one thing says it's not, and so to stop the confusion, having the documentation is the best, and I believe that's could be a selling point for realtors when you're marketing your house. Hey, we have hurricane proof windows, discount for your inspection on your wind mitigation inspection. And if they don't, and for some home buyers, it may be a concern because they're thinking, hey, I don't want to pay that much in my home insurance, but that could kill a deal as well. You know, hey, the insurance is way too high. I can't afford the mortgage and and all these extra fees for the inspection. So there's some techniques or some things you can put in place, like shutters. You can say, hey, yes, you can get it, that may be a concern, but put it in shutters. It's the same as having in hurricane proof windows. So they'll get that credit. Now, again, you have to have, the shutters have to be hurricane proof, but it is cheaper than replacing all your windows. And be real careful about what you say, because they may buy the house because of what you said, and then later find out it wasn't. And so, like I said, documentation, you have the proof, and then there's no confusions. Oh, this is doing that too. There we go. All right, a 4-point inspection is different than a general inspection. So a 4-point inspection looks at 4 specific systems, which are the roof, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Now, home inspection, or 4-point home inspection is typically used for older homes. Again, you might, insurance company may not say, hey, we need one of these inspections because it's a new build, or because maybe it's not, you know, brand spanking new, maybe it's 5 years old. They're saying, okay, everything should be in order. So I would always talk to, or have your client talk to the insurance company and talk to the lender. What inspections do they actually need? Because to save them money, they won't, they may not have to need these inspections. A 4-point inspection is not detailed at all. Oh no. Because it's just for the insurance company. They only want certain things. They ask, hey, is it good? Is it bad? Let me know. And so, and that's something I believe it's worth noting. So mold is very controversial. I don't personally believe in mold inspection in most cases, unless you're getting a deal from the client because there's mold, then there's no need for one, I believe. Now, there's 4 ingredients for mold growth. First is mold spores. And mold spores, everybody has it in their house and in every business, because once you open the door, mold spores are so light, they float in on air into your house. You need the right temperature for mold growth. So if you live in temperatures in between 15 degrees to 122 degrees, it's the right temperature for mold growth. Food. So there's 2 common food for mold in your house. One is going to be drywall, and the other is wood. Most common. They can grow on mold, or not mold, dust. They can grow on your clothing, cotton, such as that. So what mold actually does to eat, it excretes this chemical, and it turns it into something it can absorb. So basically it's like acid coming out of the mold, damaging whatever is on, and then absorbing it, and it continuously do it until that material is gone. And the last thing mold needs to grow is water. And so whenever you find mold, it's most likely an indication of a high moisture area, whether that there was a leak or the house hasn't been ventilated.
Like the bathrooms, I think bathrooms that come with it, right? Because some, so that's a question I have too. With the bathrooms, I'm assuming it's important to have a vent.
Yes.
To get all that moisture out, because that moisture will create. Because my house in Jersey, it was, well, my parents' house in Jersey, they didn't have a vent. And the bathroom gets so humid, and then there was some mold. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But we took care of it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
some jurisdictions, you're required to have a vent in the bathroom.
Okay.
And because it's for that reason, because of mold, mold will grow. And I don't know, next slide. Okay, I'll talk about vents in a little bit, and there's a reason why I'll talk about it a little later, but so when we do a mold inspection, what we do is we have to have at least 2 samples outside. So we'll get like a vacuum, and the vacuum will suck in air and it will blow into a filter, and that filter has like a peach tray. It's about 1 inch, 1 inch by 1 inch, and so it blows onto that peach tray. Now, if you don't have it calibrated right, then it's either gonna flow around it or it's gonna hit it and bounce off. So one, you have to have it calibrated right. And again, if you're doing it wrong, then it throws out the calculations, and it just doesn't work. So they'll have to come back out and redo it. And for every sample we sent in is a cost. So as a home inspector, I cannot say that is mold. There is mold in the house. Because mold is so small, you have to look under a microscope to make sure that it's mold.
So what if a buyer asks, hey, is that mold? You can't say.
I can't say, yes, that's mold, no, it's mold. Now, when we do an inspection, some of the wordings you may see is conducive to mold growth, which means basically this area can grow mold. Most likely there's water in that area. Maybe there's a leak in the under a faucet, and we see the drip. It's now conducive to mold growth because there is water. Now, you may also see apparent mold growth, and it sounds like, oh, that means you have mold. No, it means that it looks like mold. And so now, as a buyer, if you see this in the report, you may be able to use that and say, hey, there's apparent mold growth. You know, can we get a discount on the house, or bargain with the seller? But they may not say, they may say no. They may require you to get that mold inspection, and that's when it's required to get the mold inspection for documentation. And that's it. If for legal reason, then you have to get a mold inspection. But for the norm, I think it's not worth it. So after we send that out to the lab say, okay, outside is high, it has a high mold spore count. Inside your house, maybe a low mold count. But what I want to mention about that, if we had a house in Palm Coast and another house in Port Orange, and the mold count inside is 2,000, however they calculate it, I believe is per square inch. And then outside is 3,000 in Palm Coast. They said, okay, inside is low, outside is high. The mold count is normal. Now, if you have a same house, same square footage in Port Orange, but the mold count outside is at 1,000, and it's still 2,000 within the house, they're the same, mold count. Now they're saying, oh, there's a high mold count inside your house, there's probably mold in your house. And so that's where I'm like, that's controversial, you know, same mold count or spore count inside the house.
What's a high mold count for inside and outside?
Good question, there is none.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the government doesn't say, hey, this is too much mold, spores in the house. Or this is too much mold, outside the house, there is no minimum. Now, I may talk negative about, mold inspections. But there are some, serious things when it comes to mold. Like health wise, mold will cause, they say, diseases. And those diseases are allergies.
Oh,
So it sounds really bad, really scary, but mold causes allergies. So someone with, a compromised immune system will be more susceptible to, mold. They'll be, they'll probably realize that you walk in and like, oh, this is bad. So again, with mold inspections, the best tools that we have for mold inspections are our nose and our eyes. They say if you can smell it, most likely you have mold. If you can see it, quote unquote, then probably mold. And the best thing for getting mold out is, or the mold spores out, is venting out your house. And how we do that is with the bathroom vents or the kitchen vent.
what about pools? Like, I know that's a big thing too, like, since it's technically outside most of the time, do they get mold?
They get
Or
a lot of
Or
different
does it get mold?
it gains a lot of bacteria on top of it, and that's why you should have a pool pump circulating that water.
Is that why the water turns green when you use it a lot?
Yes.
Okay. that makes sense.
No, there's, I can't 100% say it's mold.
Right,
It could be different things, but
Okay.
most likely different fungi. But yeah, bacteria grows, it causes that green lining over the pool, where you have to scrub it. Now, one thing to note is if you think it's mold, if it's been there for a while, if you wipe it off and it is discolored under it, then it's mold. That mold discolors whatever is growing on. Now there is some instances like if it's growing on like a glass window or something, because there's dust on that window, it's not going to discolor the glass, but because that's a hard surface. But like the grout inside the bathtub, you'll see a lot of those, the grout's black is because of the mold growth. Because, you know, you're washing off all that skin and dust that gets flying onto the walls.
Yeah.
It's landing inside of the grout and mold is growing on top of it. And so this will also, when you're venting out your house, this will also throw off the count, right? So I know a lot of people buy like really high-end grade filters to put in their AC unit to, you know, try to get all that stuff out of the air. But your AC doesn't run enough to actually do what we believe it's doing. But what the AC unit helps to circulate the air, that it will dry some of that water that's inside of your house. But what you really need are the cheap brand filters, because what it's doing is just filtering out the big particles like hair and stuff like that. And it's just protecting the motor.
How do you, I'm sorry, is there like a certain chemical that you use to, like, especially like, if somebody sees it on like a bathtub or something, or tile, like you mentioned, with the grout, is there a specific cleaner that you know that will clean that, or?
So grout, a specific cleaner, not exactly, but any hard surfaces that mold is growing on, all you need is water and like dish detergent. thank you,
Okay.
detergent.
Oh,
You don't need anything fancy.
nice, cool.
That's how you clean it. Grout is a little different because it's porous. You may need something to try to get into it. So you
Well, like
can
a
use
window
it.
or something like that, you can use that.
Yeah, when
Oh,
you
okay.
just wipe it off. And so, again, if you're selling a house, you got mold growing, you can take care of some of those problems. Now, if you have a house, an older house that it like kind of run down, but their walls are recently painted, it could be because there was mold in there and they're just, they may have cleaned it properly. They may have had somebody come out and take care of it, but they probably painted it to hide some of those spots that the discoloration caused by the mold.
Now, can you paint over more? Like you were mentioning, paint, like, can you do, like, what if you don't clean it, you're just gonna paint over?
You can paint over it. It may come back and
Yeah, I was
eat
thinking
through
like,
everything,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. So these are some other inspections. WDO, which you will have to have for a veteran, a VA loan.
Yeah.
Every time. You may have it for a first-time home buyer. Now, typically a appraisal is not an inspection, but when you're dealing with a VA loan, it becomes an inspection. And this is actually a pass or fail. Home inspection, you don't pass or fail, it's just information. Appraisal, you can pass or fail. And so some of the.
VA, you're saying?
Say again?
Only with VA?
VA, sometimes, no, with first-time home buyers, you may have that as well. The first-time home buyers aren't as strict as the VA portion, but some of these things that they mentioned will be in your home inspection, like cracked windows. You can't get a VA loan with a cracked window. So if you do your home inspection, technically you can walk around the house and see it yourself, look at it yourself, and you see that, you say, hey, are we able to get this repaired? If not, then you say, okay, we have to pass on this house. So that saves you as an agent time, you're not going around looking at more house or putting your time in getting a contract for this house because it's not going to pass the appraisal. So you say, okay, we have to go to the next house, or maybe they will negotiate and do something about it. And so knowing the criteria for these appraisals will help. Home inspectors are not appraisers, so we may or may not look at everything. We may not consider everything an appraiser would. I'm not sure exactly what their inspection process are, but I looked at some of the reasons that an home appraiser will fail. And everything that's in there, we typically check. There's not a reason unless, again, it's blocked, something's in the way, we can't see it, we don't report on it. So a little bit about Inspectra Home Services, our why. The reason why we do business the way we do is because a story of a woman years ago, 1989. She wanted a better life for her family. So she moved from the Caribbean to the US. And of course, that comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of things that she didn't understand, that she didn't know. And but she continued to move on to do what was best for her family. And 2006, her next step into providing for her family was to own a house. And she got that house, and she had it, unfortunately, in 2008, things turned. And because of that, she lost her house. And the reason is because there was a miscommunication, understanding of how things actually work. And that's very, very hurtful to me. That woman was my mother.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and she did as much as she could, and right at this moment, she is very scared of trying to own another house. And that happens with, I believe, with inspections as well. They get so scared about what is actually noted in the reports. And so one of the things we do are a walkthrough inspection. So you can book a time for the inspector to come out, check the house, and then actually walk through the house with the inspector and truly understand why was this noted. Because some of the things that are in an inspection, very easy to fix. Now, we will always recommend that, you know, you talk to a contractor or somebody that specifically that's knowledge in these areas. But like one of the defects that we will note in the house is if a electric plate is missing. And the reason for that is because somebody can stick their hand in there, get electrocuted and die. And so for us, safety really matters. Something else that we do is maintenance consultation. And that is where we will, after the house is purchased, we'll go back to the house. We'll schedule an appointment with the homeowner, and the realtors are welcome to come through and to do it with us. And so that gives you another touch with your client, and you know, and you may get another referral from that because they remember, hey, you did such a good job, and now you just continue to provide. And so we'll go through and we'll talk about some of the most important things when it comes to maintaining your house. We believe in finding your peace, which starts with a good inspection, but keeping your peace is reminding clients that, hey, if you want to keep this house looking good, running real well, these are some of the things that you want to take care of. And that's all included in the pricing. We offer a second chance discounts, which means if a homeowner decides, you know what, after inspection, we don't want this house because it's just more than we realized, that we'll give a $200 discount for the next inspection.
For the next house.
Yeah, for the next house. It's easier with Inspectra to offer, you know, different services or different change to the scope of the inspection. Like, hey, you know what? We'll check the detached garage on us. We'll check the irrigation system, although we normally won't. And so that gives the homeowner or the client better. It gives them more insurance. You know, they feel better that everything was checked. But this starts with the realtor knowing what we will check, what we won't normally check. And for Keller Williams agents, we'll do the 4-point inspection and the wind mitigation for free. So you'll pay for the general home inspection and you'll get those two for free.
Oh, cool.
That's my mom. Love her to death, and every time every time I come over and visit, she's like, "Oh, I miss you so much." That's my information. Do you have any other questions, concerned about anything?
What are your inspections?
So for a up to 2,000 square foot house is $400.
Okay. What about anything?
Say it again.
What about anything that's under like 1,300?
It's all the same price.
Oh, it's all the same,
Because-
okay.
Yeah, because we just funny enough, the longest inspection I had was on the smallest house that I
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
And it like on a mobile home, normally we don't go in the attic because there's no attic space, but we have to go under the crawl space, and you know, we have to have a certain clearance to go under the crawl space, and most crawl spaces aren't that high. So I'll go under and check it anyways. I'm pretty small. I'm like, okay. Now, if I see a snake, I am not checking it. But that's just my, I don't deal, yes, I do not deal with snakes. I hate snakes with a passion. I will not check if a snake, because there's probably more snakes, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I'm gonna do as much as I can to appease the client.
And,
So from 201 to 3,000 is say $500, or no, 480. Anything above 3,000 will be 16 cents per square foot.
okay, cool. Do you do it alone or do you always bring a team? Or-
I typically do it alone.
Okay,
Um,
like if it's like a.
now if it's massive,
Right,
then
right.
then I would reach out. I work with my mentor, and he's a lot more knowledgeable than I am.
Okay.
So I'll bring him out just to try to get the house examined as fast as possible, because
Okay, cool.
again, we did a 7,000 square foot house with 3 of us. It took 6 hours.
Okay.
You know, we can do it. It's just a lot more information, because you know, when we get into houses that big, you're checking multiple electric panels, multiple AC, all of that. Yeah, and so now all the inspection prices is typically around 16 cents per square foot. You may get some houses 17 cents per square foot, but I thought that was a good number.
Cool.
Any other questions?
No, I think I'm good.
All right.